Good day everyone, I am Ricky Layderos, a computer science student. For today, I am going to discuss and explain my created Flex program that tokenizes an email address. The program is all about to identify and recognize if the email address that the user type is valid or invalid. So this program will identify which is the username, which is the domain, and which is the extension for the email. This program can also display the valid email address based on the invalid email address that the user typed. For that, to identify if the email typed by the user is valid, there is a rule for that. So the username, which is your name and last name, it is a character which have a combination of alphanumeric characters with a combination of dots, hyphens, and underscores. In order to validate that the email address is valid, it contains one special characters only, and the start and end of the email should not start with period, hyphen, or underscore, and it cannot contain consecutive dots or double hyphens or double underscores with the email. So the domain should be a string of alphanumeric characters, same with the username. So it's a combination from small and capital letters from A to Z and numbers from 0 to 9. And same with the username, it should not start with a dot, it should not end with dot, and it must have at least one dot in order to identify if it's a valid email address. So the extension should be a string of characters with a minimum of 2 characters. So if you put an extension with just 1 character, so for sure it is an invalid. So the program will output the following tokens for the input email address. So it will dissect from the username, the domain, and extension. And if you input an email, so for example, the email you inputted is Layderos@gmail.com. So for this email, the program will identify which is the username, which is the domain, and which is the extension. So for this, the username for this specific email is the ricky.layderos@gmail.com. The domain would be the Gmail. The domain will be the .com, and the extension will be .ph with at least a minimum of 2 characters. So if you type an email address with double period, double hyphen, or double underscores, or you started an email and ended with period, so expect that the email address you type will be invalid by this program. So before running this program, let me explain the code. So for this part, this is the include that is studio.h and string.h. This is the standard for every program, since this is almost like a C program. So it has this header which is responsible for input and output, and the option annoy wrap is also same with the header. Without this line of code, the Flex program won't work. So for this part, in order to tokenize the email address, so the username should contain or a combination of small and capital letters from A to Z, numbers from 0 to 9, with at least 1 hyphen, 1 underscore, and 1 dot. So it's a combination of those characters, special characters, and numbers. The domain is almost the same from its characters, special characters, and numbers, but in the extension, it should be a minimum of at least 2 characters from letter A to Z, so no numbers for the extension. For this part of code, so this is the front end where after you input the email, it will print this format, this message. So if you input a valid username, a domain, and extension, it will print a valid email, and then it will input the email that you put after this valid email message. And then for this part of this code is all about calculating the lengths of different components based on their positions in the string. So it will identify the username, the domain, and extension of your email, and later on identify if it's valid or invalid. And if your email is invalid, this program will recommend a valid email address that you can use, and the valid email address that this program will recommend. And for this part is all about printing out the components of the email address, which is after identifying by this portion. So it will print the input, the user's input username, the domain, and extension. So the whole email address will be dissect and sort by this program by identifying the username, the domain, and extension. So for this part is after analyzing the email address that you input in this program. So it will print not accepted email if you input an email which doesn't go with the rule. And this is also the YYLEX or the GCC code for the program in order to properly function this specific problem. Alright, so that's the explanation for the code, and now we will run the program. So before that, make sure that you already installed, you already have the GCC and the Flex software in your system. So to check, just type GCC, and if you receive this message, it means that you already installed the GCC. If not, you can install the GCC for your system. Another to check is the Flex software. So we just need to enter Flex string in the command prompt and press enter. And if you receive this kind of blank output, it means that you already have a Flex software in your system. So to run the program, first change the directory where you save your file. So for me, I save it to my drive D, and I will change the directory to the folder which is called my Flex. And with that, the first thing to do is to type the command Flex and the file name of your program. So in my case, it's ricky.l. So after that, expect that the program will generate, in your folder, it will generate a C file, which is the lex.yy.c. And after that, we will just gcc that generated file. Just type gcc lex.yy.c. And after that, lex.yy.c will generate a program or .exe file. After that, we will input the A letter, which means to run the generated A.exe program. For that, it means that the program is running, so you can enter the email addresses that you want to tokenize or recognize by this program. So we will now check if it will validate the email address that you will input. So for example, an email that starts with a small letter with 2 period, my last name @gmail.com. Press enter. So for this, the program will display that it is not accepted email. The reason for this is because the email address contains 2 periods for the username, and the email doesn't contain an extension, which is a minimum of 2 characters for the extension. So trying another email address, for example, Ricky Layderos gmail.com.ph. So for this, we will know that this email is valid email address, dissecting the whole email address. The program will display the username, which is the ricky.layderos, the first part of the email, and then the domain is the gmail.com, and the extension is .ph, or the .ph, which is a minimum of 2 characters. So testing another email address, for example, Ricky @gmail.com. For example, an email. Another not accepted email because it doesn't contain an extension. Another email address. So for this, the program dissects the email address, and this is not accepted email almost, since the program displayed the possible valid email address. So the program removed the first name or the first part of the email. So the valid email can be layderos@gmail.com.ph. So the program removes a Ricky dot because it contains a double dot or a double period for that. So the username is Layderos, the domain is gmail.com, and the extension is the .ph, which is a maximum of 2, minimum of 2 characters. So that is my presentation. So this is the Flex program for tokenizing and recognizing email addresses if it is valid or invalid. I am Ricky Layderos, and thank you for watching.